session later, Putin's back, and he never leave it, apparently. And he does, as you said, have this argument.
Whoa.
Hey, Doug.
How are you?
I guess there's just you and me showing up on the screen right now.
I don't know where you went. Something just happened. You're back. How are you? I don't think we've met.
I don't think we have. I'm the guy that facilitates the meeting tonight. I've facilitated all the other ones.
Yes, I was involved or am involved with Englewood Unleashed, and this is my first meeting. This whole thing's being recorded, right?
It is. So you got to be careful what you say, right?
Well, no, I actually think that's a good thing, actually.
Yeah.
Because we can speak right now. Can you bring me up to speed a little bit on what your thoughts are and the history and whatnot?
A little bit, I can. I've been working on this. Oh, I would have to go back and look at my emails to see. Probably, a good 9 months maybe. I started out with the group, and we were tasked with trying to come up with some kind of an agreement, some kind of a proposal that we could send back to council and say, here's what the different players and the different groups feel would be an equitable resolution. And so we had, the sports field guys, we had the off-leash folks, we had the on-leash folks, we had neighbor representation. And we held a number of different meetings, came up with the draft. Part of that draft was to suggest a survey. And so they conducted the survey in the spring. And then we brought that draft recommendation back to council, and then they had a few suggestions and a few ideas, and that gets us to this evening.
From what I don't even want to go there because that's kind of diving into the topic.
Yeah, I don't want to dive too deep. And for those of you,
let's not. The meeting doesn't even start for 5 or 10 minutes. So
right.
So there's no point in getting into content without.
We got to get everybody on board before we do that. And for those of you who were on or just came on, Doug was asking me just a few questions about how we got to this point.
I'm not Doug. I don't know why that says Doug.
Why does it say Doug?
I know why.
Why?
Doug is like en route from an airport or something, and he doesn't know, like he's flying. So he probably sent John the link.
Oh, that's it.
As Doug.
So then I just thought you were Doug. So what would you like me to call you?
You can call me John.
John. Okay.
Doug is the head of Englewood Unleashed, and I am volunteer status.
Okay.
And Doug contacted me and said that he was going to be unable to make it today, and that another voice in addition to Steve, would be appreciated. So yeah, I'm filling in for Doug as best I can.
Okay, what you might be able to do is go to the 3 little dots in the top right-hand corner, and I think you can rename yourself.
Let's see. Oh, look at that. Can I be like anybody I want, huh?
I suppose I'm, when we get in the middle of discussing all of this, I'll probably just call you by whatever name you put there.
Well, they're going to be like, wow, George, who's that really handsome actor?
You're breaking up on me, John.
George, what's his name?
You might be thinking of George Clooney.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you, Jake. We can't see you,
There you
but we
go.
can hear you.
Great, thank you.
And I'll try this again.
Okay,
There it goes. It took it that time. There we go.
okay, good, good. And welcome, Stephen. And Stephen, it looks like we got 3 Stevens on the call today.
All
Hey, how
right.
are you?
I'm
And
good.
how are you, Steve T?
Doing good, Steve's.
We got this one. I mean, if there's 3 of us, that like gives us almost a majority or something, doesn't it? And there's a bunch of other people on, but I can tell that Christina's here and Dean's here and Alan and Lindsay and Dave and Jake and Debbie, I think, are somewhere behind the screen.
Is it possible for
Bless you.
us at some point, because this is my first time attending, to do an introduction on, who we are and what our relationship is and why we're on this, why we're in this meeting?
It is, and I will have you do that just as soon as I get done welcoming everybody and thanking them for taking time to be here. But I've got about 3, maybe 4 more minutes. I usually want to wait a couple of minutes after 5:30 to get started, just to make sure we've got everybody on board. And Christina, I see you're by your part flower bed there. I don't know that I said hi, but welcome and hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Christina.
Hello. Thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
Hi, Alan.
Hey there, how are you?
You got that
Got
echo
feedback.
going again.
Are you at a stadium?
I wish I was. No, I had it on my desktop because my laptop decided to reboot and do that whole thing. So I was like, oh man, I'm not going to be part of that. So I figured I would be able to hear you, but now I can see you. So
Good deal. Plus, today I got an update to Windows, so I was really pleased that happened before I was trying to log into a Zoom someplace, and then your computer kind of takes over and gets a life of its own.
right.
Mine's doing a patch right now. So if for some reason I just disappear, that's what happened.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, Steve. And everybody else.
Yep. Yeah, we'll do introductions in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
No, you haven't disappeared yet, Christina, so maybe you're good to go.
It's on step 2 of 4, so it could be a minute.
Yeah, well, pretty soon I'm going to have you share your screen, so hopefully your patch gets done before
Yeah,
it
hopefully.
decides to get weird.
I did send it to Debbie just in case something weird happens. So she's got a backup in case I disappear, but hopefully that doesn't happen.
I've got it ready to go.
Okay.
Is it possible to like share something that I have on a screen if I were to pull up a report or something?
Theoretically, it's possible.
Okay.
Let's see if we need to do that when we get there. I always want to be careful of, everybody deciding to pull something up, but I also want to make sure that we've got the information we need. So.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve Kelly, are you on what are you watching? Are you on a laptop or an iPad
Yeah.
or?
Yeah, I'm on a PC laptop.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure. I'm on an and iPad, but there's a little place where I click and a menu comes up, and one of the items in there is share content. So I don't know if you have like
Oh.
something that has three dots on it or something like that, or
Well, I see something on the bottom. It says share screen.
Yeah.
that's it.
Yep.
That's it then.
Okay.
Yep, let's see where we go when it comes to our discussion. And if we need to do that, then we'll figure out a way to get all of that technology working. I'm about 2 minutes after, and my cast of characters has changed somewhat since last time I did this. So it's a little hard for me to know whether I've got everybody here that's supposed to be here or not. So let's see,
We're missing a couple, I think. But yes, you're correct. We do have some new individuals representing Emerson Park. We've had a little change in Englewood Unleashed, so we've got some different people there as well.
yeah. I know I wrote this list down so I could be all prepared to go, okay, everybody's on screen now. We're good. We can get started, but my list is not correct. So do you know, Christina, do we have everybody on board, or do we need to wait a minute?
Let's go ahead and get started. And I think we're missing Kate Truesdale and Monica Johnson. So they may jump on here in a bit. They both confirmed. So let's just.
Okay.
Mark Husbands, is he still on the task force?
He was. Unfortunately, he got sent to Alaska for work. So they're in a time difference. I think it's 3:30 there. So unfortunately, work conflicted with him. So he won't be on this call.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, Christina, there's not an issue with just me being the only rec board member on. I don't think there's an issue with that, but just want to make sure. Okay.
This is a little different. This isn't a quorum type situation with boards and commissions. It's just the task force. So we'd like to have these other individuals on, but if they're not here, they're not here. So we can move forward.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if those of you who have your cameras off feel comfortable putting them on, it's always nice to be able to put a face with a name. So if you can do that, that would be great. I'm Steve Charbonneau. I started facilitating this task force at its very beginning. We've talked through a whole lot of different issues and concerns. We've come up with some consensus that we feel pretty comfortable with. We've also come up with some points that we aren't quite in agreement on. And this evening, I hope to get all of that ironed out. I work for a nonprofit organization that provides this kind of service to municipalities. And so for those of you who are new, I don't represent the city, and I don't represent any particular opinion when it comes to those of you who are here or those who you're representing. I'm the guy in the middle that just needs to make sure we get through all of the information and gets as close to a consensus as possible. The other thing I want to just remind you, I know that there are some different opinions. I want to remind you that we'll need to be respectful of each other as we share our different opinions. I want to make sure we hear each other, even if the other person thinks differently than we do. I do think it's important to hear those different opinions. Also, I'm going to work at managing the conversation so we're not interrupting each other and we are hearing each other. And so you can either, when you want to make a comment, you can raise your hand. There's a little spot at the bottom of the screen to do that. You can also just wave your hand like this and I will see you. And so I'll manage a conversation that way. Any questions of me before I jump into introductions? Okay, I'm going to go introductions by who's on my screen and in what order they're in. And that's always sort of a tricky thing. So I'm going to call your first name. If you would introduce yourself, give us an idea of where you live, kind of quadrant or area, and then who you're representing this evening. That would be really helpful. And John, let me start with you.
My name is John Lieberman. I'm a volunteer for Englewood Unleashed, and I live basically Oxford and Grant. I'm a dog owner, and I take my dog to pretty much all the parks on a rotating basis.
Okay, thank you. Martha.
She's muted.
You're on mute, Martha.
There we go.
There you
Okay.
go.
I'm Martha. I've lived in Englewood for 35 years plus. I am also a dog owner. I live right off of Jason Park, and I do go to other parks, Canine, Rotolo. I walk him there, but I go through different parks as well. And I just here because I want the safety of the children, especially the children and the families playing at the parks. And like I said, I'm a dog owner, and the parks are great, but we really need to, respect each other's boundaries.
Okay, thank you. Christina.
Hi, I'm Christine Underhill. I'm the Director for Parks, Recreation, Library, and Golf. So I'm a neutral party in this. Ultimately, our goal is to maintain these parks as best as possible in the long run and have good programs in place to do just that.
Perfect. Steve Kelly.
Hi, I'm Steve. I live Delaware and Radcliffe. I've been a homeowner here for 28 years. I guess you can say I volunteer for Englewood Unleashed, but I kind of speak for myself. I wasn't appointed to the task force when the second past president had a baby and left town. She asked me to sit in on a meeting or two, which I did. And oddly enough, the invites kept coming, and I'm not one for turning down invites to meetings. So here I am.
Thank you. Lindsay Peterson.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Peterson. I'm the Open Space Activity Supervisor for the Parks, Recreation, Library, and Golf Department. I'm involved with field rentals. That's where my main information is coming from.
Okay, Jordan.
Yeah, I'm Jordan Storfa. I am an Englewood resident of 13 years. I'm in District 2, adjacent to Emerson Park. So I'm representing the neighbors and surrounding houses of Emerson Park.
Perfect. Paul.
My name is Paul Rogala. I live about 3 blocks north of Duncan Park. I'm an off-leash park user. I mostly go to Jason, but I also go through Duncan quite frequently, not necessarily for off-leash uses, just on walks in the morning and stuff. And I am also a volunteer with Englewood Unleashed. So.
Okay, thank you. Dave Lewis.
Hi everyone, I'm the codes manager. I supervise the code enforcement, animal control, as well as the pilot park ranger program. I represent the city primarily with the enforcement and animal behavior expert. I do serve the state as well as a Bureau of Animal Protection agent with the Department of Agriculture.
Thank you. Stephen Young.
I'm Steve Young. I'm on the Englewood Parks and Rec Board, and then there's usually 3 or 4 of us on a task force, but I'm the only one here, but I was part of the initial proposal that got sent towards City Council, and then we're sort of the City Council representatives for this, and then it'll relay up forward. So.
Great, thank you. Dave Lee.
I'm Dave Lee. I'm the open space manager for the city of Englewood. So I manage parks and the golf course.
Thank you. Alan.
Wrong button. My name is Alan McGurl. I'm the president for Pirate Esports, and I'm here as an advocate for keeping the parks safe.
Perfect. Jake.
Hi, so I'm Jake Gilbert, and I've lived in Englewood since I was 6 years old, and I have a couple of kids of my own now, and more than anything, I just want them to have the same opportunities for safe play that I had when I was a kid, and want the parks to be safe for everybody else's kids and dogs and everybody. Thanks.
Thanks. Dean.
Hello, my name is Dean Kimblom. I am like Jordan, representing residents and the homeowners near Emerson Park, which I'm a homeowner that abuts directly to the park. I've been in Englewood for 6 years, and we are the proud owners of 2 dogs.
Great, thank you. Debbie, I know, I don't know whether you want to introduce yourself or not. You kind of keep all of this running for us.
Definitely. So I'm Debbie Severa. I'm the executive assistant for the Department of Parks, Rec, Library, and Golf, and I kind of just behind the scenes do the Zoom call and all that. So.
Well, that kind of behind the scenes is really important. So I appreciate you doing that. And I understand you're going to help me track votes when we get to that spot. So that'll be great. Alan, you got your hand up?
I forgot to say that I live in Englewood. I'm on Washington and Cornell, and I have 2 dogs too, just in case that mattered.
Okay. Some of you have kind of been with us from the beginning on this. Some of you haven't. Let me just go back to May 26th when the recommendation, or the draft recommendation, it wasn't a final, it was sort of a mid-report back to council. They looked at the draft proposal. They asked some questions. We spent a fair amount of time on the survey that was sent out. It was interesting, if you'll recall that council meeting, they almost took it upon themselves to say, well, let's just have the discussion here right now and let's just make a decision. But then they said, now we'll send it back to the task force one more time. We really would like to get a consensus from the task force if that's possible. So they sent it back, and we're going to do the best that we can. They did acknowledge that reaching a consensus on something like this, at least a unanimous consensus, might be tough. There's a lot of feelings, there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of emotions. And so they acknowledge that you guys on this task force have a tough time trying to come up with something that is acceptable to everybody. I don't want to go back to the beginning and start all over again. So I want to kind of build on all of the work that we've done to get to this point. My goal for this evening is to review a somewhat altered or changed or modified proposal, go through that, and then come back and look at it specifically and answer any kind of questions, issues, concerns that arise. And then ultimately, council really did push us to take a vote and say, okay, how many people wanted this as opposed to this? So Debbie, you're going to help me a little bit on how you want to word and how you want to manage the voting piece. But when we get to that part, we'll get it figured out. The way we'll do this is I'm going to ask Christina to go through the full PowerPoint. It's not a lengthy PowerPoint, but there are some revisions to all of the different parks that the staff, that Parks has worked on, that everybody's tried to figure out what might be after all of the feedback, the surveys, the council comments, your thoughts and ideas. So we'll use that as kind of a starting point. I want you, Christina, to be able to get all the way through that before we start jumping in. And then what I'm going to do is ask you to come back to the very beginning, and we'll start down through the slides. And at that point, I'll take comments, I'll take questions, I'll take opinions, and then ultimately we'll kind of vote our way through that process and see where we end up this evening. Before we start that, let me just ask one more time. Any questions, anything we need to cover? Okay. Christina, you want to take over the screen and you want to just walk us through that?
You got it. So to clarify too with what Steve was saying, we do have about 13 questions that we're going to pull on. So it'll be something where it'll show up anonymous for the public, but we will know how you all voted. And ultimately the goal is to be able to take that data. We may not have consensus, but to know, 8 out of 13 of you agreed on whatever and so many didn't. So we'll go through that. I'll go through this presentation and then we'll go back through it, like Steve said, and ask the specific questions. All right, hopefully you can see that. If the slides do not move forward, please let me know and I'll restart it. All right, so just to review, these are the parks we're proposing to be off-leash, have off-leash areas: Jason, Duncan, Emerson, Cushing, Northwest Greenbelt, and Canine Corral. What we're proposing for dog off-leash hours to reduce confusion that we've had for many years is to propose off-leash hours be from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Some areas may be off limits for off leash during practices and games, and that may come true at Duncan and Jason if those both move forward as off leash areas. This is a proposal for Cushing Park. It's a passive area of the park. From a parks department, I don't know what else we'll do with this area other than just have some native area. It's just under an acre there at 0.6, and maybe a little bit bigger. We are proposing having a fence and also wood chips versus grass. And I'll show you some pictures of some other dog parks throughout Colorado that we've visited to see how they've managed their turf areas or wood chip or gravel, whatever it may be. One of our challenges, there's a lack of irrigation to this area. Also, it's a small dog park. It's not very large. So wear and tear of the park may be more predominant just due to its size. So one of the questions to think about is, should this be a small dog park, so little dogs only, a passive park, passive dog park, so dogs that maybe be older, just don't have any interest in playing with other dogs, should be a smaller passive park, or for all dogs. So that's a question we'll come back to when we go back through this and actually take a poll from all of you, so keep that in mind. Northwest Greenbelt has been an off-leash park for many years. There is a small fence near the playground area to keep kids from running into the street. We're not proposing any fence go up. It's a very large space. This is kind of a pass-through park. A lot of people walk their dogs off-leash through this area. So we're not proposing any changes to this. Keep it off-leash, no fence. And so the question we'll have for you is, should it remain an off-leash park? Canine corral, no changes here, just ongoing maintenance, improvements to the wood chips and various conditions that we deal with annually. So no change, won't be any vote on this one. This one will stay. Jason Park, we're looking at adding a permanent fence separating the playground and other park amenities from the off-leash open space area there on the north side of the park. Our proposal is putting a temporary fence between the open space off-leash area and the athletic fields there. And then the temporary fence that would be installed would be only put up when we have practices or games scheduled there to separate the athletic field from the off-leash area. When we don't have anything out there, the fence would come down, so the off-leash would expand into the multi-use field in addition to that northern part of Jason Park. Also, just a reminder, this would become a 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Off-leash area on the north end there. And then we would require leashes on the south side of the park. So any dog that's south of the fence area and the playground, the picnic shelter, just the open space down there would have to have a leash on. Duncan Park, we're recommending a partial fence to separate the off-leash from the other park amenities there. We're also proposing to still be able to use the park for athletics when needed, but when it's not being rented for athletics, it could be an off-leash use area. And the leash, again, would be required on the south side of the park where the other park amenities are. Emerson Park, the question will be, should this be an off-leash park? Some ideas that have come up from Emerson residents and our council member that's been talking to these residents is licensing specific for the Emerson neighborhood and possibly only residents. So you'll have a chance to vote on is, should it be a park that only residents can be at? It's a unique park. It's small, on-street parking only, houses back up to this park. The other question too that will be asked is about hours. We're proposing 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. in all the other parks. This park, because of its location and proximity to homes, we may have a similar time frame that we have now during the summer months. Spring and summer months is 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. or 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. only for off-leash at this park. So those will be questions you all can vote on. This is just a thought. This is not the boundary whatsoever, but just an example of what we're talking about for licensing for this park, where it wouldn't necessarily be accessible by all residents of Englewood, but within a boundary, they would be licensed to be able to utilize this park. So that's just another question we'll be asking you all. And again, that's not specific what the boundary will look like. It may be larger, a larger space. Fencing options, and some of these slides are covering questions our council members had. So fencing options, this is a decorative type fence. We see this in a lot of other dog parks around the area. It's not cheap. It's $105 per linear foot installed. So you can see for Cushing Park, which is under Acreage, it's about $73,000 to install this fence. Another option that we'll have, and you can vote on decorative or this black coated chain link, which doesn't look too different from the decorative fence. It serves its purpose. Is a little bit cheaper at $30 per linear foot installed. So you can see like Cushing Park goes from 73 down to 21, but we want your vote on that. Do you want something that's more decorative, or would the black coated chain link work as well? A question the mayor had was park acreage. You know, what do we have as far as our acreage of parks, from turf to water to non-turf areas, to flower beds and all of that. So this is broken down. Our turf areas are just under 68 acres. And on this next slide, I broke out our proposal for off-leash. So you can see we're proposing 18 acres throughout our park system to be used for off-leash, which is 26.5% of all open space turf areas. Jason Park would normally be 1.7 acres on that north side, but by allowing access to the multi-use field when not in use by athletics or rented out, you gain another 2.5 acres for that park. So you can see the breakdown of that. Also, we are considering and serious about looking into licensing. Boulder has a great program for voice and sight. And so you can have a license just for your dog, or you can expand that and go through an educational program to allow your dog to be off leash and pay an additional fee to have that tag. And so you can see how Boulder breaks their licensing program down by fees. Granted, they haven't updated the 2021 fees, and it'll depend on the program we go with and what the cost is and how much it'll actually be for the licensing of each dog. So it may look a little different for Englewood, but this is to give you an idea of what another community is doing within the area. And with this too, it goes beyond just off leash. It's having a tag on your dog. So if your dog were to get out of your home, code enforcement or the park ranger, animal control can return your dog to the right location beyond just being able to visit the parks. As far as maintenance is concerned, weekly maintenance will occur typically spring through fall, 1 to 2 hours throughout the week. It could be a little bit more, kind of depends on the conditions. But mowing, trimming, irrigation checks and repairs, general maintenance, adding wood chips, those sort of things would occur weekly as needed. And then biannual closures to actually rest turf. So this is an example for Jason Park, where it's a turf area. We may have to shut it down for 6 to 8 weeks. The benefit to having a temporary fence is we can be resting the multi-use field while the open space on the north end of the park is open, and then flip them. So we would need some coordination and cooperation from the off-leashers in doing something like that. But the goal is to have a rotation of closures. So when one park closes, others are still open for use. But the biannual closures would be more like seeding, aeration, some of the deeper maintenance needs of the turf to keep it healthy and green. And then these are examples of off-leash areas that we've visited. Dave may be able to speak to his visit at Douglas County. They had some pretty large off-leash areas, and they had a couple areas. Unfortunately, Englewood's smaller, and we don't have large parks like Douglas County does to install large areas. We kind of have what we have. But they did mention today they have a lot of issues with the turf and keeping turf growing. They've used grow sheets that help seed the area and have grass grow in, but they haven't had a whole lot of success in holding the turf to be healthy for a long time. Denver uses a lot of wood chips in their parks. Lakewood is dirt, kind of native type area. Colorado Springs was gravel. So it's a mix of all different types of applications for the off-leash areas. Stephen, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to understand, is there a huge difference between the maintenance you guys do at Canine Corral versus the off-leash dog parks that are currently in place versus the non-off-leash parks? Like, is there a huge amount of maintenance that you guys see as a difference?
Canine Corral is wood chip based, so we have to keep that refreshed, and there's some other various maintenance activities we do there. So it's Canine Corral is very different. If Cushing became a dog park or off-leash park and we use wood chips, they'd be maintained somewhat similarly. As far as sports fields are concerned, you maintain those differently than in just a passive open area. And so most of our parks are passive open areas. And as far as the off-leash parks, really, there hasn't been a whole lot of different maintenance done over the years beyond a closure for, a couple months to help grow turf back in when needed. So those are just a few examples of off-leash areas. Paul, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a question. I didn't realize you were taking them as we went here, but I had a question. When you were showing the pictures of the fences,
Yes.
do those come in standard heights, or do you customize it? Do you just ask for, say, we just want it like 30 inches, 36 inches, 42 inches? Was the pricing on those for the same height for either the decorative or the?
Yeah, and these wouldn't be 6-foot fences, probably 36 to 48 total.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's hold the questions until we can work our way back through. So I appreciate that.
That works. We're almost through this. So the other just update too is rules for the parks. We've had some discussion about using QR codes, which have become very popular through COVID at restaurants. If you visit a restaurant, you had to use a QR code to view their menu. So QR codes were fading out over time, and people kind of stopped using them, but they've kind of made a comeback. So we know there's challenges. You can put up signs, people don't always read them. They might not use the QR codes. But the thought would be to also reduce what we have on the signs. So it highlights, and these are just some examples of what we may want to highlight to help people understand the off-leash area or their park that they're visiting, and rules that they need to have in mind while they're at that park. So that's just one of the other things we're looking at. We've heard a lot of comments, people don't understand or they don't see our signs, and we want to make sure everybody understands the rules of our park when they do visit them, whether it's for off-leash or just general use of the park. So that's all I've got.
Do you want to run us back to the beginning, and then we'll just start working our way down through there? I am going to do my best to try to make sure that I can see hands when they come up. So help me out with that one as we go.
You got it. So, and like I said, we're going to do this as a poll. So Debbie, I don't know if we can do the poll while I'm sharing screen or not.
Let me go ahead and try.
Okay. So the first question is going to be on this is, should the off-leash hours, there we go, be from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. So you should be able to vote by.
Let me interrupt for just a second, Christina. I want to check and see if there's questions, if there's discussion, comments, anything that we need to have on the hours slide that we've got before we vote. Jake, and then I'll go to Dave Lee.
Yeah, hi. So I guess my thing about the poll, like even that first question, it's kind of hard to just say yes or no to it because it's conditional. I mean, I wouldn't really want to see an expansion of the hours. I mean, I'd be fine if the off-leash activity was contained, but if it's anything like it is now, then I wouldn't want to see the hours expanded. So it's really hard for me to just say like yes or no to that question. Same with some of the proposals like with Jason Park and stuff. I feel like it's kind of hard to just boil that down into a binary thing,
Okay. I don't have an answer for that, Jake. I don't know what to tell you. We were asked by council to try to get some kind of a sense of what the task force thought and felt, and that's what we're trying to do here. So
is this park hours proposing 6 to 11? Is that question in isolation, or is it attached to any scenario? Or
so this is a general for off-leash. Emerson will have a different question for that. Like I said, we may have the morning and evening hours, and we'll have an opportunity to give your opinion on that as well. So ultimately, we're trying to get this to a point where it's understandable by the community and there isn't confusion by having change of hours throughout the year and just follow normal park hours. So that's what the current question proposal is.
Okay, Dave?
I just wanted to make it clear that staff is not voting in this. It's the people on the task force.
And I'm not voting either. So, and I don't have the ability to put your hands down. So if you've put your hand up and you've finished with your question, then if you can put it down, that would be great.
I have a question, Steve.
Sure.
Now, is this 6 to 11, 365 days out of the year, or is it going to be off hours, per season?
This would be year round.
Okay.
Other comments, questions? And again, it's hard for me to see the whole screen. So if you put your hand up, it jumps to the top of my list. If you don't, you probably have to say something and then you jump up.
Well, I wanted to clarify, but Dave, I think, clarified. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure who's on the task force, because I know at one point I thought the Daves were not members, but they were there to provide advice, professional opinion as we needed it. So,
correct. The city staff is not voting. All residents are voting.
okay.
And I'm not voting.
Right.
So,
All right, thank you.
to your point, Steve, the composition of the task force has sort of moved around a little bit too. So I understand your question. Steve Young.
Oh, where to go? I kind of on the same topic. I'd just be wondering that it has mixed up so much. The poll is where we're at. So, but it is kind of interesting that the people that have been very involved in this from the beginning are not here, and vice versa. There are people that have not been involved with it. They're here last minute, and it doesn't really matter to us on the city council. It's just, I want to make sure that it's not going to cause, I guess, disagreement later on if people that were involved intricately from the beginning are not here. And then all of a sudden the vote comes up and they weren't involved. So city council is going to see the results regardless. It's just, there may be some concern with that going forward. So I would be aware of that, Stephen, Christina, and Dave.
Okay. And Christina, you said that the public won't see how individuals vote, but you'll have a record of how individuals vote, correct?
Correct, yeah. We'll redact names. We'll share with council however the voting goes, so they have more data and they'll be able to see what your opinion is. And yes, the task force has changed, and the individuals that were on it prior were all invited to be on this. So unfortunately, they're not here, and we won't be able to get their vote necessarily. We may be able to email this to them and ask for a vote for them as well. That could be an option we do if they can watch this and then put their votes in. This will be posted publicly as well.
How many are voting?
Go ahead, Martha.
How many are voting?
I've got, let's see.
9.
9?
Correct.
Okay.
I think, and this is just off the top of my head, I think we've got about a half a dozen folks who have been fairly consistently here from the beginning. And then we've got, that would make it 3 that are new to this evening. And staff's not voting and I'm not voting. So that group would be out. So I think you've got 2/3 consistent, 1/3 new. Comments, any other questions? And I'm happy to take questions about the hours. I'm also happy to take any questions or comments about the voting process. Okay. Then I guess the thing that we need to do is check one of those little boxes, right?
Right.
And hit submit. And I don't know how much time to allow for people to do that, but shouldn't take
So
too long.
we do it ourselves right now. Everybody gets a live
You
vote.
do. Everybody
Okay.
gets a line vote. So you check the one right in front of you.
All right, I'm done.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to call it good. That should have given everybody time to vote. That's not too complicated on that one. So you want to move to the next slide, Christina? Oh, we get to see what it is. Okay.
Oh. Next.
You want to go? Yeah, there we go.
There we go. So then next one, the next poll will be regarding Cushing Park.
So before you pop the poll up, comments, questions, concerns, anything we need to cover when it comes to the proposal for Cushing Park?
I would just
Yeah.
like to
Let me go
Oh.
with Steve. He got his hand up, and then Steve Kelly.
Okay.
Steve Young, you're on mute.
Too many clicks. Sorry about that. So Christina, are we going to see, like, on your breakdown on this going forward, is it going to be 3 or 4 different questions for this one? Like, are we going to have the poll between small, big, regular dogs plus like the irrigation questions, or is it just going to be, are we doing off-leash Cushing, and then we're going to figure the details out later?
So we'll have I think 2 questions for this one regarding should Cushing have a fence off-leash area, and then should Cushing be for small dogs, passive dogs, small passive, or all
Gotcha.
dogs?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, you got it.
Okay. Let me go with Steve Kelly, then I'm going to go back up with John.
Well, it's a two-way thing. I think, with the busyness of Dartmouth, a fence is, really important for safety. But I'm thinking about what the dog expert said, off-leash areas should be expansive areas. So that's a concern with that. But I could just see dogs jumping out into Dartmouth, and that would be a nightmare. So I just wanted to express that.
So Christina, when you're talking about fence, if we fence this, we're talking about a fence that's going to keep dogs from jumping out into Dartmouth, right?
That would be the goal, and that's why we're asking about should this only be for small dogs? Because we know large dogs could probably easily jump over a 3-foot fence, but there might be some options to do a 6-foot along Dartmouth and along Inca, and then a shorter fence that's along the trail there. So we'll look at the safety side of things, because that's the big issue we have too is just safety. We don't want anybody to get hurt, dogs to get hurt.
Yeah. Dave Lewis.
I just wanted to point out that the fencing would also be consistent with, I believe, the master plan and the Cushing Park fencing that's already in place for the safety of visitors and children. So I am patrolling this area based on my training and experience. A fence would need to be utilized, especially because there is bike paths that cross that area, as well as pedestrian and road traffic. So in my professional opinion, a fenced area would probably be the most optimum to minimize any potential liabilities for the city or for pedestrian, vehicle, or bike traffic.
Yeah, sounds like that's something you got to do. So, other comments, questions? You want to put the questions up, Debbie? The poll. So
go ahead.
I'm interpreting this question not so much around should it be fenced or not. I'm interpreting this question to be, should we have an off-leash, dog area in the highlighted part of the park?
We would not put a dog park here if there's no fence, just for safety reasons.
Yeah, so it's not a fencing question. It's do you want an off-leash dog park area here? So go ahead and vote. Do you want to put the next one up, Debbie? I guess maybe we get to see how we voted first. I'm not sure. No, okay.
Oh, I did not. Let me see if I can go back.
All votes were yes on that one.
Oh, okay. Okay. Should Cushing Park be for small dogs only, passive dogs only, all dogs, small and passive? And can we select only one, or I guess?
Only one.
Only one. Okay. Are we good on that? Does anybody need some more time?
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to go to the next one, the next slide, Christina?
Yes.
Okay. Let me take comments, questions, thoughts, observations on the Northwest Greenbelt. Nobody has any questions about that? Comments, thoughts?
I,
Let me let Jake go, and then if there's somebody else, then I'll catch them next.
I'll just put on the record, I personally don't think unfenced off-leash parks are a good idea in general. So that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Martha, did you want to say something?
I just want to say that I'm sure there's a lot of people who have never been to this park before. It is a huge park, and there's not a whole lot of traffic like people think, but it's a nice park.
Okay. Steve?
I believe that since we last met, some data did come out, and I think there's been 0 dog bites to people in dog parks. I think the mayor mentioned that. I just wanted to, in terms of safety, I think I'm confident that everybody that's present in this meeting and that has been on it before is all for safety of, kids, adults, dogs, everybody involved. And I'm real happy to hear that there have been no bites at off-leash parks to humans.
We go to John and then Dave Lewis.
I have been to the Northwest Greenbelt a number of times, and it is pretty large. However, this is not a park where you're going to play ball with your dog. This is, as I recall, it's not particularly flat. There's a creek running through it. So this is a little sort of a different situation in terms of, activity with your dog, as I recall.
Okay, appreciate that. Dave?
So in this area, I can speak that we've had very little concerns or violations, specifically with the Northwest Greenbelt. I do also just want to point out that I'm not sure where Stephen Kelly received his information. I don't want to rehash a whole bunch of data, but there have been dog attacks in our off-leash parks.
Okay.
To humans, Dave?
Yes, there has been.
Okay, the mayor, coming out of her mouth at the last meeting, said there has not been bites. So that's where I got my information. I did request it as part of the task force, but I was told I was going to have to pay $30 an hour for the city to research that. And I think that's an egregious expectation for someone on there, because I think it is very important data. And I believe Council Member Russell might have asked for that information. I didn't see a document, but the CRTs, but I know, we could, go back to the, I don't know what, 2 meetings ago where the mayor said that there have been no bites. That's where I got my information.
Okay. Steve Young.
I'll just point out that this was part of the initial proposal, and that this is, as it was said, a little bit different on a park. But this, similar to a canine corral situation, is I don't think there's, Christine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's no sports capability at this park. Other than having the playground, which is prohibited, and has been, there's no super high risk of pirate use sports or anyone else's major interaction here, which is why there was never really a huge objection or debate on this one, because it is a city park, but there's not really any organized sports or events around it. So I'll just say that from the initial city council proposal.
Okay. And I haven't heard any really comments or questions or issues or concerns around these parks. So we probably can just go to the vote piece, Debbie, and see how everybody feels about this. Do you agree that Northwest Greenbelt should remain an off-leash park? Yes or no? Click the button. Got it? We good? Okay. Okay, thank you. You want to run to the next slide?
All right, Kanan Corral does not have any questions. That'll just remain status quo as is.
Okay.
So we'll move to Jason Park.
Yes, and I remember we've had lots of discussion around Jason Park. So it's changed a number of times in the proposal. Let me open this for comments, questions, concerns. Jake, you got your hand up first.
Thanks. So yeah, I do think that anything there really ought to be contained as far as the off-leash stuff. Like, for example, the city of Denver doesn't allow kids under 10 inside their fenced enclosures. All their off-leash parks are enclosed. They don't even allow kids inside. Here, apparently we have these signs that say you use the facility at your own risk. So does that include people walking down Jason to the light rail station? You know, does that include people who live across the street? Because I do have code enforcement reports here. I just went ahead and paid for them. I didn't object to that. Plenty of people are getting bit, children hurt, lots of harassment going on of dog owners. Dog owners have called in asking to please fence the park because they avoid Jason Street, they avoid Quincy. So I do feel, so I don't even know how to vote on this because, you know, I guess it's in the right direction, but I just don't think it's nearly enough. So I really don't know how to.
But you'd like to see fencing around the perimeter.
Yeah, I think it should do what Denver does and what all the other cities around here do, which is just contain it. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I've got a string of people who have comments, so let's keep going and let's see what happens. Paul?
My only comment was it's never really been clear to me exactly where the alignment of that north-south fence goes, the yellow dotted line. I mean, I can see where it is right now on the plan, but I don't know if it was going to be, if we were going to haggle over, like, should it run from one or either of the fence corners coming out of the building to the building to the south. You know, there's a northwest fence corner there and there's a northeast fence corner there, or is it going to be in the middle? And you know, it's not a deal killer, but it's always been sort of just like it was just there. But and I don't know, the way you drew it out in the plan, it sort of splits the difference. But I just want to make sure there are a couple of large trees there, and we risk having it go through one of them. Well, I guess one of them died. So, you know, I just wanted to register that it always seemed to be a little fuzzy as to exactly where that line was.
Okay, Christina, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, sure. The one consideration we look at when placing this type of fence, a temporary fence, would be the sidelines for the multi-use field there to make sure they have enough space to have clearance on the sidelines. If kids are running full force or adults are running full force, that they have plenty of room to slow down before they hit the fence. And that particular placement isn't probably exact once we get the other fence figured out as far as the alignment and how that's going to be structured with some of the other renovations we're doing to the park, then that temporary fence we place. But again, we're looking at more the sideline for the athletic use to make sure there's enough space there for them to have.
Okay, so the placement of both of those fences is a little flexible right now.
That's not exact.
A little flexible. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks.
Steve Young.
Just a question for Christina, maybe Dave Lee. So is the intention of the temporary fence in the situation for an Englewood Parks and Rec employee to go out every day and put this up and down every day they have a practice or a game? Is that how the intention of the temporary fence is?
That is the intention. However, we would probably be more strategic on the days that we have games. So if we know Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we've got practices and games, the fence may stay up those 3 days, but then come down for the other days. So I can't say specifically what that's going to look like just yet, but from a management side of things, that is what we're looking at, is to have it. And then that temporary fence would also go up for maintenance reasons as well.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure, like, it seems like that's pretty labor intensive versus, I don't know if then Dave Lewis is going to have issues if you leave the fence up for 3 days in a row. Someone's going to come out and say, well, nobody's out here. I have people on the field because it's 9 a.m. on a Tuesday and there's no games going on. I don't know if that had been ever actually cleared up, or maybe it's a discussion if the temporary fence is approved, then you guys figure it out later.
Yeah, and we have thought about that. And from a management side of that fence, we may post a schedule so people know that from 5 p.m. on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's being used. And it is something that we could open up, like that south side along that home or that place there. So you have access to it. So that's something we're considering as well.
Okay, thanks. John.
Yeah, I did have some questions about the temporary fence. Another question has to do with the permanent fence. Does it not make more sense to take the playground area, include some grass in that area where people could like lay down a blanket or whatever, and just for the safety of the children that are in that playground area? Frankly, I'm a little surprised it wasn't fenced in the first place. But does it not make more sense, just from a safety standpoint and frankly, child abduction standpoint, to have a fence around the playground and leave the rest open to off leash?
There are some challenges with fencing playgrounds. We're not on a busy street, so typically you don't fence playgrounds. Like Northwest Greenbelt, we've put a fence so kids can't just run into the street. We have heard comments of callers that have called in to city council, concerns of fencing playgrounds and parents not being able to quickly access if something happens on the playground, having to jump a fence if they're on the outside of it and their kids on the playground itself. So there are concerns with fencing the playground itself. And again, the alignment that you're seeing on the slide may not be exact. It may curve around the backside of that picnic shelter area, so there's additional space that can be utilized.
I just think that, Englewood is no Shangri-La. I mean, we have some seedy elements. I live there. I've lived in Englewood since '93, and frankly, it's fairly irresponsible of a parent to be outside of a fence if their child is on the inside of the fence.
Okay.
And I'm saying leave grass there, put in some additional benches, leave room for the picnic table. But just drawing this line in the sand or line in the grass as you have it doesn't strike me as the best possible solution, particularly for the safety. I mean, I say it's safer to fence the children in, and you're saying it's not as safe. I just think it stands to reason that it's safer to have them in an enclosure. And a large enclosure, don't get me wrong. I mean, again, room for picnic tables, room to put a blanket out on the grass. That's my thought.
Appreciate that. I am also taking notes on everybody's thoughts, concerns as we go. So those will, I know that
regarding the temporary fence, and this question is for Alan. I mean, what type of temporary fence is this? Is this metal? Is it like that plastic orange thing? I mean, what is it made of?
So that one probably goes to Christina.
Yeah, what we've looked at is like an outfield breakaway type fence that you may see on softball fields or baseball fields. So typically it's green with some PVC pipes. If you were to run into it fast enough, it will come down. So that's kind of what we've been looking at. just so it's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than those orange snow fences.
Is it something that with a cooperative effort between Pirate Youth Sports and, Englewood Unleashed, in coordination, that fence could be put up when those games are played and taken down when the games are over?
The management of the fence would definitely be additional discussion with Englewood Unleashed and Pirate Youth Sports and park staff to figure out what's the best methodology to move forward with on how that fence is managed, because that probably will be the biggest challenge with doing this, but it also opens up the opportunity for additional space for off-leash.
Stephen Young mentioned, if the fence is left up for 3 days, because there's a game Friday night and there's games, Saturday afternoon, that the field's not being used, but the fence is up and a dog owner is back there. And, code enforcement, shows up. Is that a ticketable offense?
So that's what I mentioned before about posting the schedule. We might post the monthly schedule or weekly schedule on the temporary fence, and code enforcement at the park ranger would have that as well. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging park to monitor just due to the moving pieces of it, literally. But it's something that from a staff perspective, we think we can definitely work to get this so it functions for everyone.
Can I ask a question to Dave Lewis?
You can ask one more and then I'm going to move to somebody else.
Okay, last question. Dave, can I ask you a question? Dave Lewis?
He's coming off mute.
Go ahead.
Dave, under the circumstances, that temporary fence is there and there's no game going on, but the fence is up. Would you instruct your people to issue a ticket or to not issue a ticket?
I'm not able to answer that because it's contingent on too many variables right now and how this area is going to be managed. So that's not a discussion I can have at this time. I don't have all that information.
Okay.
Let me go to Jordan.
Yeah, I just had a question, and it only came up because I'm new here and I don't remember how all the decisions were made. But was fencing the dog park area and all permanent fence, was that a consideration? And if it was, how did that kind of fall off, or how did that? I was wondering, just a little bit of background would help me a little bit.
Sure.
We don't have to redebate it all. I just
yeah. Let me take a run at that, and then if I got close, we're good. We had talked about fencing in the dog park portion of the park, but we got a lot of feedback that said there's a significant amount of property on the other side of that permanent fence. It's being used, for youth sports and adult sports, and all of that's important. But there's a lot of time it's not being used. So is there some kind of a compromise we can come to that would allow off-leash use of that when it's not being used for sports or for other uses?
got it. Okay, great.
And I think this was an attempt on Park's part to say, okay, let's try to figure out what we can do. Steve? Yeah, Kelly?
Okay. Yeah, you answered that question well, by the way, Steve. Question I have about the temporary fence, and I'm glad you're taking notes too. During these, 6 in the morning, 6 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon on a game day, what if on those days, Christina, the bulk of that fence stays up, but 10 yards on either side, either end come down. So it's not labor intensive, putting it up, taking it down, but to allow people to come through, there wouldn't be the enforcement thing. It's open until, and then with good signage, just saying, at 2 o'clock today or whenever, at 4 o'clock today, practices are going, you can't be back here, so the notice is given, and then at an appropriate time, you just put up the whatever, 5, 6 sections of fence to seal it, so to speak.
That would be the intention, yes, to allow access. There might be times we don't allow access to the field's been prepped a certain way for a particular game or whatever it may be, but the intent would be to allow access when games are not going on. But we'll rely on the dog owners too to make sure they pick up, after their dogs, because that's been the biggest challenge of this field is that conflict there.
I agree 100% with that statement, Christina. Yeah, I was just thinking it would, by opening up the ends, it would save parks a lot of labor, pulling the whole fence up, putting it down, or, just having that whole issue of, well, it's closed, but it's, 6:30 in the morning and we just can't get back there. That's one of the beauties of those temporary type structures that can come down piecemeal. I think based on some comments at a recent city council meeting, the residents are going to want this fence to be as ornate as possible, of course. All fences that may go up. And then comment in regard to fencing, the city of New York, they have marvelous parks. If you ever go to New York, all you parks people, go to Prospect Park in Brooklyn, go to Central Park. Olmsted created those or designed them. But all the playgrounds in those cavernous parks are enclosed in fences for the safety of the kids.
Okay.
But Englewood, we are unique. We don't need to do what Denver's doing. We don't have to do what New York does. We have a great 17-year history. I just learned that this park, since its inception, has always been an off-leash park.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm done.
Okay, let me ask about the one point you brought up, Christina. Is there anything that we need to say, do, factor in? Because I think one of the things I heard over and over is both the safety of the park, but also particularly when it comes to the athletic field, picking up after your dog is just paramount to making this whole plan work. And do we need is there anything we can say or do to encourage that?
No, in talking with Englewood Unleashed, I think there's a definitely great partnership that can be in place when this comes to fruition here, and making sure we're communicating with our residents to know to pick up and ensuring that we have plenty of dog waste bags at the park, so that can easily happen as well. So really it comes down to communicating and educating and working together to make sure all residents or visitors of the park understand, especially for the off-leash area, what's required there.
Okay, good. Jake, you have your hand up.
Thanks. I would just point out, I am quite confident abductions from playgrounds in Englewood of children are not an issue. Fights are routine, and I have code reports to prove it.
Okay.
We are the off-leash task force. Why can't we see this data? Especially like for Jason Park. What's the data?
I would show it to you. I mean, I have it right here. I don't have an easy way to show it to you right now. It's all in paper. I only got hard copies.
Let me talk to whoever we need to talk to and see what I can figure out on that. Martha, did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, there's a few things I'd like to say. Sure. After hearing a lot of the comments, as John was saying about the playground, it being fenced. So he wants to treat the kids like animals, let them be free. And like Christina was saying, is that when you have a party there, not everybody is going to be in that playground to watch their children. They need room to go run and go play, just like the dogs need room to go play. So I have to disagree with the fence being around the playground. And as far as the fencing goes, I believe that the temporary fencing is going to be so confusing, labor intensive. Like you say, you're going to take it off, put it back on, and then people are going to be there and they're going to say, oh, well, I didn't know, like they're doing now. I don't read the signs, even though the signs are there, even though you tell them, they don't care. Okay. So to me, I think there should be a permanent fencing, and the residents, the survey that everybody, not everybody, but the chosen ones received, they all want a permanent fence. So when we start talking about a temporary fence, we are not listening to the residents who have voted. And what is the sense of voting for something if we're not going to follow through? And I think with the fencing, like where you had the blue at, wherever that blue line is at, you know, I like where it's at. Yes. So when Englewood does not have any games, that can still be shut down. So when people come in for, say, have a picnic or whatever, they can have some kind of lock on there for a code to get in there to play soccer or whatever they want with their families, to keep it open and clean for the families. Posting up a schedule, people would not look at that. When Jason Park was closed, temporarily closed, and I'm a block from Jason, so I'm there. I drive through there 3 or 4 times a day. I walk my dog there. I'll drive by there, and people seem to be pretty happy while I was there when I would walk, and they were okay. They were not complaining about, oh, it's so small here to take their dogs. People found other parks to take their dogs while Jason was being repaired. So to me, I just think that having a temporary fence is not going to fix anything. I think it needs to be permanent. We need to look at the safety of the families and the kids. So, you know, everybody on the south side, they can be free. And as far as the Jason being unleashed all these years, that's a lie. I've been here since '83 and it was not unleashed. They just started doing this maybe 20 years ago, because I remember people were complaining about this like about 20 years ago. So
I'll take exception to your statement.
I understand you
There's
both can
plenty
have
of opinions
you
being
both can
spoken.
have different opinions. So
right, and I listened to Kelly. I listened to your information. I didn't interrupt. So let's have some respect here. I'm giving you.
Keep going, Martha.
Excuse me.
Keep go ahead. Keep going. That's what I'm saying.
So the only thing that I'm saying is that as far as the fencing goes, the residents voted. They want a permanent structure. And, you know, some people will deal with the dogs, some will not. But I think if you have a permanent structure there through all sides of the park, you're going to have less activity of people complaining of, you know, like, oh, I didn't know my dog was supposed to be there. Oh, I didn't know this, or I didn't know that. And the people who are going to be renting the pavilions, they will know ahead of time why the fencing is there and where they are allowed to go. And it's a safety for all people.
So let me ask, Martha, when you're saying permanent, are you saying the whole fence, or are you saying it should be permanent on the, what is that, the north end that would permanently go from the blue line up to the building?
Yeah, where the blue line is fine. You see where the yellow line is at?
Right.
That's the temporary fencing. I'm saying that should be blue.
Okay.
That whole structure should be blue. That's going to be less hours of, you know, of labor for, you know, the parks. It's, you know, to me, it's like, take it off, you know, put it on, take it off. Dogs might be there. Dogs might be crapping on that side of the grass, and the kids will still have to go through there and clean it up because they didn't pick up the dog poop. And I'm sorry, but I've walked it. I've seen it.
Okay.
So let's just keep it clean for the kids who are playing in that area. Give them something.
Okay. I'm going to go to Jordan, and then I'm going to go to Jake, and then I'm going to go to John, and then I'm going to come back to Steve Kelly. And I've also got to pay attention to my time. So
don't forget about Alan McGrill here. I'm trying not to jump in on anybody, but my name wasn't called, and this is a hot topic for our program. So please let me speak sometime.
Alan,
I will be very brief.
Alan, I'm more than happy to have you speak. You only jump up to my screen if you raise your hand or start to speak. So I didn't even see you. Sorry about that. Jordan?
I only wanted to say that a permanent fence makes a bunch of sense. A temporary fence seems highly accommodating, but logically, it seems like a real hassle. And I can see where the confusion would come from. So those points make sense to me. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Jake?
So just real quick, I did dive into the survey results, and I would just like to point out 2 things. Support for proposed off-leash areas and parks. So we had 66% support a fenced dog park at Jason Park versus 17% opposed. So if we went to the trouble to have this survey, which is statistically valid, I don't really know why we're proposing something and only able to vote on something that is not what the survey respondents wanted. And one more quick thing, just in terms of the general dog leash preferences, if you tally up, there should be, anyway, if you tally up, dogs can be off leash, but in a fenced area, dogs should only be on leash, and no dogs in parks. You get 73% support, which is support for a reduction in the off leash program in general. But for this point, I just particularly want to point out, we have 66% support a fenced area at dog park versus 17% opposed. So I don't really know why this solution is what we're going with, unless we're just trying to accommodate the loudest folks.
Okay, John?
I guess my question would be, why would we want to put a permanent fence where the temporary fence is outlined when the potential for conflict doesn't even exist between September and March? So, I mean, why do you want to break up this beautiful park into all these sub-parks when you really only need that temporary fence when Pirate Youth Sports or others are using that field, which is not between September and March?
Okay.
And I think Steve Kelly's, solution to, opening that on both ends, which I never even considered, is a great idea. And then you could go with temporary fence there.
Okay, appreciate that. Alan?
Thank you.
I didn't mean to not see you. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm kind of quiet anyways, but this is one thing I can't stay quiet about with the program. Just to let everybody know, for Pirate Youth Sport events, we do not allow our own parents to bring their dogs or any kind of animals to any kind of sporting event. Now, we can't control the park, but when we rent it, we ask that those people do not come on. Well, it's kind of supposed to be said that way, but in our soccer program, we're lucky to get soccer back in March and then flag football. And we did have some issues with some people coming up and having their dogs run through our field, and then they don't even say sorry, and then they're trying to get their dog, they can't control it. And then you hear them complaining that, well, it's our park too, and I know John was at a park and he educated some gal one time, but he can't be everywhere to educate everybody 4 days a week when we're running parks and when we're running sports. Makes it difficult for us. So just to give you a heads up, Pirate Sports does not allow animals at their facilities while we're doing stuff. We haven't been to Jason Park for over a year and almost a year and a half. Martha, I agree with you. If you take that blue line where it's at, where the yellow, it meets the yellow, why wouldn't you just take it straight up blue on that side? So you have two fences and it gives them that corner. That gives them the option to have an open area or say, but Pirate Esports wants to use that field. And I know there's a lot of other places that will use it also once it's ready. But in the past, we've had folks and organizations say we don't want it because dogs come piss on people's bags. They come, take people's food. It's just irresponsible dog owners. Now I know Englewood Off Leash has some really great people involved, but they can't be there the whole time. So it really makes it hard on us when we're volunteer coaches, barely getting these people to come out and help us. We've got thousands of kids that want to play, and then I'm running around, I see a big dog poop. Same thing happened at another park that I had to stop playing. I was like, anybody got a bag? And I had to pick it up for our football game, which was really inconvenient. Now we have this problem. So my other thing is the year, if you keep that open year round at 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., what about the wear and tear? Even if you had that fence up temporary, why would you do it per day? Makes no sense. Why wouldn't you do it per season so you can keep the grass green, you can keep everything correct? I mean, I hate going in every time with a bucket or a bag to pick up somebody's droppings. It's just not fair to us in that situation. And I know, again, John and I have had a couple conversations on this, but I just want people to know that we're not happy about that. I love dogs. I have dogs. I'm happy licensing my dog. I like the idea of having just two fences, keep that pristine field of Jason Park, the field, athletic field, because I'll tell you what, that other part, we used to use that for our T-ball. We don't use it. Pirate Sports is saying, hey, we're willing to give up that section of the park, which we could also play a little soccer there, to offset giving us the big field. We need the big field. It's a football field. It's a large soccer field. It's the only one Englewood offers and has that can offer us. So I'm just asking, let us have that, have the other parts. And, you know, that's one of the biggest things that I think Pirate Esports is trying to fight for. And if this, you know, I don't even know what the questions are. So it'd be nice to see what the questions are so we can kind of wrap our head around it and bring ourselves to have more questions and be more efficient in this conversation instead of jumping on each other. I don't want to jump on each other. I want to give my opinion. I think one last thing, yeah, Pirate Esports, I think I've said everything I need to say as far as that goes, but that's where I'm at with Jason Park. So thank you for letting me speak.
Okay. I've got two hands up. I think I'm about ready to close the conversation on Jason Park. We have spent a fair amount of time, not only this evening, but in previous meetings discussing Jason Park, looking for some kind of balance. It's by far the park that people seem to feel most passionate about. So I'm going to go with Dave Lee and then Steve Young, and then we'll probably time to pop the questions up.
Hey, Steve, I don't get to respond.
Let me go with Dave. Let me go with Steve. And I don't know how much response we need to have. I mean, we've been back and forth across Jason Park how many times now?
Well, you just gave the individuals that are on this committee that have a direct interest because of where they live as residents close to the park and where they operate their nonprofit. You just gave them the chance to rehash everything that they've been saying in all these meetings. So now we have new people on the committee that just got the argument and there's no rebuttal.
There was some rebuttal at the beginning. If you can make comments very succinctly and quickly, you can go after Dave and Steve.
Thank you.
I just wanted to point out there's a lot of good ideas and opinions here, but in my travels going around the metro area and looking at dog parks, if we put a permanent fence in here, my concern is the Parks Department will not be able to maintain an 1.5 acre parcel of land in turf grass. And therefore, this is why the temporary fence idea came about, to be able to open up a greater parcel or piece of space here so that we could even the wear out and give the dogs more opportunity to roam. But if we do a permanent fence along that dotted line and make that the yellow dotted line and make it blue, my concern is within 1 year to 2's time, it'll all be mud and dirt.
Okay. And I think you're right, Dave. There's been a number of good ideas put out. So appreciate you noting that. Steve?
Yeah.
Let me go with Steve Young.
Oh,
sorry. I just want to reiterate the initial proposal from the Parks and Rec board that went to City Council was to remove all of the off-leash dog park capabilities from any park that has youth sports associated with it. And beyond the obvious issue with Englewood Unleashed and losing the capabilities, that was going to solve all of the issues that we would have with interactions with people, and there was not going to be any investment involved with it. I know we've moved beyond that, but just to reiterate for people that were new to the committee, that was what was first put forward and approved by the Parks and Rec board.
Okay. Steve Kelly, I'm going to need you to be quick.
Yeah, and I believe, Steve, that that went to City Council and they sent it back because they didn't agree with that. But I could be wrong. But here we are. Martha, respectfully, many of the things that you said tonight, you said them before, but they're statements of opinion. People don't read the signs. The dogs, crap everywhere. People, that's in a sense it's hearsay, and it's making gross assumptions about people. And I was told, and I could be wrong, I'm not a liar, thank you, that when this park was open, there was a trade between land because of Cinderella City, going to the city. But when this was opened, it was opened as an off-leash park. I'd love to see documentation. If there's any historian from the city that could just clear the air, that would be wonderful. For the gentleman from Emerson, that blue line goes against what dog experts say is what an expanse, what an off-leash park should be. And if you go down there, you'll see this beautiful park with this naturally, this deep area that's natural for an off-leash area that's safe for dogs to run around. To just put up a fence because of it might be labor intensive at certain points in time in a year. I think you missed the point, and I would encourage you to get out there, especially on a nice morning. I don't believe, most of the times Pirate Youth Sports, it doesn't start till the evening hours anyway. So from 6 a.m. to school's out, to restrict that access just for Pirate Youth Sports. Pirate Youth Sports, that's great, but it's a city park. It's not a Pirate Youth Sports park. And to Alan, I would suggest you change the rule. If you have a soccer game in an off-leash park, well, encourage the people to bring their dogs. Don't encourage them not to, and then want us to change, have the city revoke privileges. It's creating problems. And last, with that, with T-ball, all those, you have that field if you want it, Alan. You've got that. There's not 1 inch of that park that any dog person is saying somebody else shouldn't be there. Everything is open to for our scheduler. I forget her name. That's sitting in tonight. That's fine. Schedule it. Schedule the picnics. Schedule the soccer. Schedule football. Schedule T-ball. Don't lament. I would bring the dogs and schedule T-ball.
Okay. I'm going to move on. Dave,
and well, the last thing with the survey, the last thing with the survey, as the Polco lady said, we write the question so people get the answers they want. They didn't ask, how would you like Jason Park to be off leash, like the 3 other parks? They said, how would you like a fence at Jason?
I think, Steve, we've gone far enough. Dave, your hand is up. Is that just because you didn't pull it down, or do you want to say something?
Me?
Dave Lee.
Oh.
Dave Lee?
No, I didn't lower my hand.
Okay, no problem. So Debbie, I think we need to vote. We've probably talked about this enough now. Let's see what the voting is.
So for this one, we've got 2 questions. Do you agree with the proposal for the fence north of Jason Park Playground? So that blue fence there. And then the second question would be, do you agree with the temporary fence between the multi-use field and the open off-leash space adjacent? So those are the 2 questions you'll be asked. Again, this is your opinion. Vote yes or no, or abstain if you don't have one.
And I hate to say this, but the data that did come out in 3.5 years, 3.25 years, there were only 6 ticketable incidents.
So that's not our question.
I know.
The question
Thank you.
is, do you agree with the blue fence? Is this one correct, Christina?
This is for the blue fence.
Okay. Everybody had a chance to vote on that?
Blue.
The next one. Okay. And then this one is the yellow temporary fence, correct?
Correct.
Do you agree with the temporary fence? Yes or no? Okay. Everybody had a chance? Okay. Do we have the votes in? Do we have a tally or?
We have 1 person who has not voted.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Can I abstain? I don't really know how to answer that.
Okay, that's no problem. You can abstain. We were just waiting to see. Okay.
Wow.
Whoa, look at that. Okay.
Let's not go fishing up votes. Don't make any phone calls, Steve.
Christina, how about the next slide?
Yes. And again, this is data for City Council to review. I mean, if we're 50-50 on all, they'll know that we're split, and that's a challenge we've had all along. So the next park is going to be Duncan Park.
Okay, comments, questions, concerns, anything we need to say about Duncan Park? Alan,
Yeah, I'll start it off. You know, Duncan's a great park for us. We can play flag football there. We can play soccer for there. I'm glad that we didn't ex-nay it like originally you were going to take away Duncan Park from us. This has been our biggest problem park. I coach there for a reason because I know there's a lot of issues with that. And we had several instances where dogs would just run off and run into our kids' bags, run our kids over, big dogs, and causes some problems, you know, and then people don't take responsibility for it. I know John Lieberman, you were there one day, you handled it. I met you, it was great meeting you, had no problems with that. And you educated the folks. My problem is how am I supposed to coach kids and educate folks at the same time? So you know, I'm just glad we have the opportunity to have Duncan, and that's what I'll go for. Thanks.
So Alan, let me just follow up with a question on that. Prior, I don't believe Duncan had a fence that ran across, sort of delineating that. When you're using that, and maybe this is a question for Christina, when the youth sports is using that, is that still an off leash, or will that be signed to be not off leash during athletic use?
It will be not available during athletic use is the plan.
Okay. Okay.
How do we monitor that then? If you post up, say, schedules or something, you know, because we used it like 5 days a week, I think. How do we educate those folks that says it's not available?
Yeah, that's I believe the biggest challenge is education and getting the word out of when practices are, when games are. We know it's been requested by Englewood Unleashed as far as when are the fields being rented. And so that's something that we're going to have to definitely look at on how do we educate, how do we enforce, do we post signs, do we post them online? What's the best way to manage this? So that's something Alan, you and I and Lindsay and Dave can all work on too to figure out, and Englewood Unleashed too, to figure out how we can do just that.
That's a challenge you guys are going to have to figure out, because I'm hearing the whole information signage piece is consistent as we move through these parks. So we'll put that on the to-do list. Jake?
Thanks. So again, I'm just of the opinion that if there's off-leash, it should be fenced. I have been in contact with a woman who lives right across the street from Jason Park, a newer resident to Englewood, who didn't know it was an off-leash park, and she's had so many problems on her property that she's considering selling her home. So there's that containment piece. Also, I would just like to point out there's been points about X number of citations in Y number of years, but I would just point out citations are not made when the offending dog owners run off, which happens a lot from these code reports. I've seen actually, I think in all but 2 cases of the more than, I don't know how many, I pulled a bunch of cases. In all but I think 2 of them, the offending dog owner ran off before a citation could be issued. So citations themselves are not really a good measure of how big the problem is.
Okay.
I'm just
Lewis,
reporting what was sent to the city after I was denied access to the same data.
Dave?
I know everyone's still throwing around data and not supporting data and concerns about that. And I'm the one that drafts most of those memos that go before city council on behalf of code enforcement. I just want to remind everybody that the primary purpose of code enforcement is to gain voluntary compliance, and we do that through education. So whether we make a contact or an interaction at a park that is documented, usually is 99% of the time a violation of ordinance. Whether we choose to cite them is the officer's discretion or the program that we're currently in. So I just want to emphasize, just because a citation is not issued does not mean that we don't have documentation that violations are occurring.
Okay. Comments, questions around Duncan? Okay, let's take a vote then.
All right, so we've got 2 questions for Duncan Park. Should Duncan Park have an off-leash area north of the playground and other park amenities? And then should Duncan Park have a fence separating the off-leash and open space from the playground and other park amenities?
Okay. First question, should Duncan Park have an off-leash area north of the playground? Yes or no? It feels to me like I should have that Jeopardy music playing or something like that while you're getting ready to vote. We all good on that?
We have 2 people who have not voted.
Tell me if that's an abstain, or I'm going to give you about a little bit of time, and if I don't see a vote come in, then we'll call it an abstention.
I have a question. Is this off-leash dog park only, so you get rid of our youth sports opportunities?
That's not the intention. The intention would be to allow still to have youth sports going on at Duncan Park.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Do you want me to close it?
Do we have our votes in? Yes, let's move on.
Results.
Okay. And second question. Should Duncan Park have a fence separating the off-leash and open space from playground and other park amenities? I believe that would be assuming that the north end becomes off-leash.
Correct.
Okay, everybody voted?
So we have 1 who has not.
Okay, I'm going to give you about 5 seconds, and then I'm going to assume that you're an abstain. Okay, let's move on.
The results.
Okay, perfect. And let's go to Emerson. So this is a little bit unique. We ran through there. We've talked about hours. We've talked about no fence. We've talked about limiting the access to residents of Englewood. Anything else you want to specify, Christina, before I open it up for comments or questions?
No, we do have 2 residents for Emerson that have not been on this task force before, but I did ask if they'd participate just to give feedback from residents that will be impacted by this potential program that could be implemented at their park.
Okay, Jordan, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, so I was going to let Dean go ahead and talk first. I feel like he's been hanging out. There he is.
I didn't see Dean's hand up till now, so yeah, we'll let Dean go first. How's that?
Thank you.
I'm not maybe as Zoom proficient as some of the other people that are on the call, but we definitely appreciate being included in the overall discussion, and we are glad that we were given the opportunity to talk on behalf of Emerson. So thanks to everybody that's on the task force. So basically, Jordan and I, we are representing neighbors that live nearby, and then specifically the 8 homeowners that live directly on the park. I'm glad that there's a map because it makes takes the imagination out of what are they explaining or we're talking. But for the most part, all 8 homeowners either live directly on the park or it is separated access by an alley. It is unique park in that I call it a drop-in park. It's literally in a neighborhood, and then there is no through street. Emerson runs, and then it takes a right this would be to the north. And so I think it truly does make Emerson a unique park. In addition to it is an acre, and doesn't have any amenities such as pavilions or a jungle gym or anything. But I don't think that should be confused that the community neighbors don't use the park for every way that any other park would be used. And Jordan will share that a little bit. So I just wanted to share that the 8 homeowners that are on the park specifically, although I do want to stress it isn't just about homeowners, it's about residents in the neighborhood. We do not support having an off-leash park just as a up and down vote. There's been some other things that have maybe been proposed, which we could investigate. But the majority of the homeowners on the park, we are dog owners. So I think that's important because sometimes there maybe can be an assumption that if you are not supporting an off-leash, then you are not supporting dog ownership or people that own dogs, and that couldn't be any further from the truth. Just real briefly, moving on, we just have a lot of the concerns that I guess have presented themselves maybe at some other parks, but I think it's more pronounced here because of the how the park is set up and configured. We do see a lot of off-leash activity, and that manifests itself into running into garages, interactions with children, and that's not hyperbolic. I mean, I can say from personal experience, it's, you come home from Costco, the garage door is open, and your dogs are steps away from getting into your house, so, or running through your property. So that is actual. And then there are other residents that simply, they refer to it as a dog park. And if they have lead dogs, they do not use the park because there's a fair amount of the activity and they just don't want to take that chance. And likewise, there are people with small children that they prefer not, they just don't feel comfortable when there are dogs at large running. And I'm not saying that all the people that have off-leash dogs are not trying to be responsible, but you never know when there's going to be an interaction that doesn't. We just had actually a block party kickoff at Emerson Park, compliments of the park. And it was a wonderful event. In my mind, I thought, well, what would this look like if it was an off-leash park? Would we be able to have the tables and the small children and everything running around? So that was a recent, I mean, just a couple of days ago. So the other thing is, it's just not for a lot of high density people driving in, which they do right now. We're less than 3 blocks from Denver. Yale is to the north. If you can see to the right, that's Emerson. It's a residential street. There's no parking. I mean, there's parking for the residents, and there's maybe 10 spots that can be used by people. And we're having this activity now, and I can't even imagine what would happen if it becomes sanctioned as an off-leash park, because the reason it's being used right now and everyone loves this park is because there's no cross streets, it's tucked in the neighborhood, it's quiet, it's green, it's an acre, all those things that make the park really a jewel in Emerson. So I'll turn it over to Jordan. I mean, I've lived there for 6 years, and again, I do have 2 dogs. Jordan's got a little bit more tenure, and he's got a family, and he can speak to a little bit more as far as what makes Emerson Park so special for everybody in the community.
Yeah. So I'll just say that this is a big vote for me. This is a big deal. It's a big topic. I'm one of the houses that to access my garage, I have to drive down that alley, which means my family and I cannot avoid Emerson Park. So if it did get busy with heavy dog usage, there's nothing I can do to avoid it, right? This is our option is to move out of Englewood. So this is a big deal for me. I'm a hard no on off-leash dogs in this park, and I'll tell you why. I've been here for 13 years. My family's been here for 13 years. We've had dogs. Our dogs have passed. We do, though, have 2 kids. We've observed this park used for all kinds of things. It has not just been a dog park. It's not a dog park. This park is used super heavily, even now recently, since they added that pathway that connects Clarkson to Emerson there along Bates. You get a lot of bike traffic and walk traffic, and that has really brought people into this park. So they're using it for all kinds of things. We've seen birthday parties, family picnics, impromptu volleyball games, kids playing soccer and frisbee. One of the neighbors likes to play frisbee golf over there. I've seen toddler play dates. During COVID, we saw a family come out and practice yoga. This park is used for a lot of things. 4th of July, there's a neighborhood party there in this park every single year. And as Dean had mentioned, Englewood Neighborhood Nights was there this Monday. So this park has a lot to offer, and a lot of that will be lost if given a special designation. Right now, we get plenty of use. We get plenty of off-leash dog use. It's fine. It's manageable. But I can't imagine I can imagine. I can imagine exactly what will happen if Emerson Park gets a special designation posted on the Englewood website that says dogs are allowed off leash. You know, as Dean said, being 2 or 3 blocks away from Denver, it's going to be, I just imagine dramatically increased car traffic. We've got that parking problem. And you know, I feel like there's nothing I can do about it. I haven't, in the 13 years that I've been here, it ebbs and flows, right? The off leash dog thing, it ebbs and flows. But at its worst, it's 20 dogs off leash. At its worst, they're in my yard, they're in my house, they're in my trunk of my car. That happened once. Anyway, so I'm not opposed to dogs. I love dogs. I just don't think that this is the place for dogs.
Okay.
And so anyway, I just wanted to say that this is a particularly important one for me because I just don't think this is a good space for it. And especially with all the residencies and the fact that there's nothing I can do to avoid this.
Okay.
Steve, if I could
Okay,
just finish it up, and then we're kind of done with us. I know there's some hands up too. And it's residents, and it's also, I mean, we've met as individuals that would be most impacted by this. And then I would just close in saying that the survey, I know there's been a lot of talk about it, and even though we're newer to this, we have been, you know, I've been following what's been going on in the prior meetings. You guys have been doing a lot of good work, a lot of good discussion. This the Emerson as a dog area had the lowest approval rate, meaning it was 41% no. I mean 41% yes, 37% no. And I know there's been some commentary about polls and all that, and I really can't speak to that. I think the polls are the polls, you know, and they do the best they can with the parameters and responses that they get. And probably last thing, everything that Jordan mentioned too. We bought our home specifically because of Emerson Park, and we really thought that it was really a tremendous asset for where we were going to live. I'll be honest, there's actual fear that it could very easily be turned into a liability if it becomes off leash as proposed, and not only just quality of life, but our property values. And we bought property here with that park not being off leash.
Got it. Thank you.
We're done. So thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Jordan, or not Jordan, let's see, Steve Young, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just want to give a little background on this. This was, again, part of the initial proposal that went out of the board into city council was to make this off leash, and that was largely determined off the fact that there is a contingent of off leash people that I'm sure Dave Lewis can speak to that populate Emerson a lot. I live a few blocks from there. I walk through, and I've had many a conversation with that group. They had actually done a lot of legwork in the beginning of this. They had I want to say a petition of like 200 signatures of people in the, I assume, you know, 5 or 10 block radius or however far they went, that signed on saying it was okay. I apologize to you two residents, Jordan and Dean, if you weren't part of that.
It was really vague. It was, we want to do something about taking dogs off leash here. So
okay, we never saw a lot of the details, so it was
there was
like
very few details there.
Yeah,
it wasn't
so
well planned.
Just to offer the counterpoint of that, I understand you guys' concern from a resident standpoint, but I just want to give the background of why this was proposed was because they came forward and said, hey, here's 200 names that are in support of making this off leash. And largely, this was one of the only ones that didn't have a lot of pushback from the beginning all the way through. So I'm not trying to sway people one way or the other. I'm just trying to give the counterpoint of you guys' point of where all the background came from.
Okay,
Steve,
let me go to Martha, who's got her hand up, and then Dean, I'll come back to you. And I've got about 15 minutes left, so you're going to have to be quick.
I just want to say thank you to Dean and Jordan for what you had said, because I had my vote one way, but after hearing you, I totally understand where you're coming from, because that park is your park because you live there, just like Jason is to me. And so I just want to say that you guys have a great park, and I'm glad you spoke up, because I would have went another way. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Dean?
And just real quick, and I want to make the distinction. It's not just because we live on the park. I mean, we interact with other dog owners and other residents too, as far as that.
Right.
And I would say, Jake, I wanted to answer you, or to Steve to address you. In one of the meetings, Jake, you did a wonderful job. You brought up twice, there's residents that have a problem and they have concerns. Well, they have concerns because they just don't like people not following the rules. No, I think they've had interactions, and it's not that we were silent. We were just wanted a room. We just wanted a place at the table. And I thank everybody for doing it, albeit it's been a little, it's been a little later, but Jake, kudos to you, because I think you were an advocate for us. And unfortunately, up until today, we really didn't have a voice.
Okay, Jake, get your hand up.
Yeah, just thanks for speaking your piece. I think what you guys have said is a really good, generally outline of the problems that come with off-leash parks and how much they can disrupt a neighborhood. Thanks.
Okay, I would like to move us to a vote. I know you've got a couple of questions around this. Christina, do you want to take us there?
Yeah, let's do this. So the question is, the first one we're going to ask is, should Emerson be designated as an off-leash park? So let's start with that.
Okay. Everybody in?
We have one who has not voted.
Okay, I'm going to give you about 5 seconds and then we'll assume you're abstaining. Okay.
Results.
Okay. Next question.
All right, so the next question is, should Emerson Park be for Englewood residents only? So this would not allow Denver or Littleton, Aurora residents to come to this park.
And this presumes, again, that it's an off-leash park, then it would be.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, sorry, you mean people from other cities can't bring off-leash dogs, or you mean people like?
Right, off-leash. So you wouldn't, the goal is to go through a licensing program, and we'll see how we can address, residents versus non-residents through a license tag program. So yes, other residents from wherever can come to this park for a party or event or just to hang out, but they can't bring their dogs as a non-resident. So this should only residents be allowed to utilize this park.
So this question assumes it's an off-leash park.
Correct. That's correct.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I thought, I need clarification. I thought that there was some border and it would only be for Englewood residents within a specific area.
That's the next question.
Okay.
Is for border, and I'll go to that next slide when we go to that question.
And let me, Dave Lewis, you get your hand up.
Sorry, I had to step away for a minute. I did want to caution people when with these particular questions. I think these were brought up by council. Is that correct, Christina?
Partially, yeah. And then survey results, and just for us to have more information to take to count.
So the concern that I have with a couple of these questions is some liabilities and legalities that may come of restricting a park to a taxpayer-used park only for the use of specific residents or only for specific licensing. If we're not treating the whole city the same, we may be potentially causing some liabilities and lawsuits. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I've had a conversation with some legal counsel regarding this and how this is implemented in other cities.
Okay, appreciate that. Let me come back to the question. Should Emerson Park be for Englewood residents only? And this is assuming that it would be an off-leash park. So, Dean, you got your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that we met with a council member regarding just Emerson and off-leash. This was brought up by residents in the park, and it is really I'm not saying that this possibly couldn't be a viable thing, but it was, it basically, it became, I guess, a point of view or recommendation within the last 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. I need everybody to vote. Are we voted in?
We have two who have not. Let me go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to give you about 5 seconds and then I'll assume you're an abstain.
Could you send it up again? I'm not getting the survey.
So can you not access it?
I'm sorry, I cannot. Maybe because I raised my hand. Yeah.
Okay, so in order to do that, I can end polling and relaunch it. Is that all right?
Sorry, guys.
Okay, so I'm going to relaunch that one. Okay,
Okay, Debbie, that means everybody needs to vote again,
has to
correct?
re-vote, yes.
Okay. Are we good now? Okay, I think that one's good.
All right, we have
Results?
one who has not voted.
Okay, I'm going to assume that's an abstain because we had one from last time, so.
Okay, the results.
Hey, we all agree.
Amazing. Okay.
Hey, Steve,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is
Paul?
Paul. I saw a little message that Alan left the meeting, so I think we're only down to 8 voting members.
Oh,
No, I'm
okay.
here. I just had to
Oh,
change
okay.
Servers. I did vote, so I just
Oh,
want to
okay.
give you a heads up.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
I-
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. I
Thanks, guys.
didn't see you, but I didn't see it pop up that you came on again. So okay, sorry.
Thanks for watching
guys.
out for us, Paul. Appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Paul.
Okay. Next slide, Christina.
Okay, so we got 2 more questions regarding Emerson. So let's see if I can get switch. Here we go. So this is not exactly what it's going to look like, but just an idea of what a boundary may be. So should there be a boundary for licensing? And Dave Lewis does have some legitimate concerns that we'll have to work with legal. There's still some steps to take with Emerson Park, but let us know what you think about a boundary.
All right. The results.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, next slide, Christina.
One more question for Emerson, just because we had some
okay.
new
Sorry
proposals
about
come
that.
in for Emerson. So the next one is, if Emerson is an off-leash park, should the off-leash hours be from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m.? Or do we do what we kind of have now with the morning of 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then off-leash again at 6 p.m. to 11 p.m.?
Okay, I'm going to let you go ahead and put that question up. And then Jake, did you have a comment or question about what we're voting on right now?
I just had more of a question of, I have some other like obligations. I was kind of wondering how much longer you think we might be here. I might need to duck out early depending on.
Okay.
I'd like 2 more questions. So we're very close to being done, Jake.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, if you could vote on this one, that would be great.
All right, we have 2 people who have not voted.
Okay, you got 5 seconds. Okay, if they haven't voted, we're going to call them abstain.
All right, the results.
Okay.
All right, next one we're going to move over to is the fencing option. So you're going to be voting on, do you like a decorative option or a coated chain link option?
And I
Is
think
this for permanent or temporary?
This is permanent.
Okay, how are we on numbers of those who have voted?
We have 2 who.
Okay.
So 1. All right.
Okay.
And the results.
Okay. Good deal. And you said you had one more question, Christina?
That's the last one, right?
That was the last one.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments or questions around the fence? I know we voted on it, but I wanted to make sure we covered those, Steve, Kelly?
So in this vote, that's only for the permanent type fencing. It's not for the temporary.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Comments or questions on the fencing? I should have asked that question before you voted, but. Okay. I don't know whether there's comments or questions on the additional slides. Do you want to run down through them fairly quickly, Christina? And
Yeah, so this is more just acreage information for proposed off leash. Any questions on that?
Okay.
We've got this licensing program. Again, there's more research we need to do, and the cost could vary depending on what it's going to cost the city to implement and all that. Is there any questions
Christina,
or comments?
I'm
on
assuming that's probably not going to come back to a task force type of thing. That's just going to be on the city council vote, is my assumption.
Correct. Yeah, and moving forward, this would be the last task force meeting unless for some reason the city council would like another one. The goal would be to take the results and this PowerPoint and share what you've all shared with us over the last year with council. And they've been watching these meetings and listening. So this is just additional data for them to consider and look at.
Okay, John and then Martha.
Real quick, I've done what I can do and to educate, people. Alan has seen me out there doing it. Just charging someone 25 to 50 bucks for a license is not enough. There are, posted on the Englewood website, rules that say you have to have a leash with you and all that. This should also be, in addition to a licensing program, it should be an educational program. And I think once you do that, you're going to eliminate a lot of the conflicts that we have going on that Alan's been concerned about in terms of picking up poop, in terms of people running onto dogs, in terms of dogs running into games and whatnot. It shouldn't just be, here's 25 bucks, give me the tag. It should be some sort of a, there are volunteers. I would volunteer to take on a room at the library and go over these rules. It doesn't need to take long, an hour, but just let's educate these people that are paying for these licenses. And then they can spread the word.
Okay, let me go to Martha, then to Dave, then to Steve Kelly.
Christina, is that $25 to $50 for one dog, or is that per household?
It would be per dog.
Per dog. Okay. And then like John, I'm with you about educating. I've seen people at the parks, I've talked to them, and a lot of them have gotten really snotty with me. But people are people, and a lot of them are selfish and they just care about themselves and their dogs. But I'm with you, educate, and hopefully something will work out.
Okay, thank you. Dave Lewis.
As you all know, I'm a big supporter of licensing, and I appreciate everything that you are saying, Martha and John. And I know you're talking about cost. That's something that may not be represented here for the city if we move forward with licensing. There's some ordinance things that need to go into place. This is more of a long-term plan. As part of that, and I'm very intimately familiar because I've been researching this for years. I'm intimately familiar with companies that execute this on behalf of the city, so it wouldn't take city staff. But there are portions that we can monitor, and one of those would be making sure that people sign rules agreements or good park user agreements as part of their licensing, so they're aware of the rules prior to being licensed. So yes, I love this idea.
Great. Steve Kelly.
Well, I was just gonna say what Dave just said. Upon getting a license, they have to read and agree to the rules. So then there's no claim of ignorance of those rules.
So if you had a question about licenses, Christina, it seems like we'd be about unanimous on that one. So that might be a helpful one to go. We're in agreement on too. Other comments or questions? I got Dave Lewis got his hand up, and then back to Steve Kelly.
Only because that was a question that's posed by council off and on, and the recommendation, we don't have the POCO poll, but can we take a hands up or hands down vote on whether or not this party or this body would recommend licensing moving forward? And that's helpful because Code Enforcement Advisory Committee is also talking about the same topic, and this would be helpful.
Okay, just before we do a hands up, let me see if there's any questions anybody has about that further. Okay, let's see hands for those who are in favor of some type of a licensing program. Maybe, I don't know if that's similar to what you've got outlined here, Christina, or just a licensing program in general, but let's
just do a licensing program in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you can raise your real hand, or you can raise your little yellow hand, either way.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Martha.
Now, this license, is this to just be in the dog parks, or if you're just walking the streets, do you need a license?
Dave Lewis might be able to answer that one a little better.
Dave, do you want to you wanna
I
answer
think we should just move forward with just the conversation of licensing in
Okay.
general, and then we can get into maybe specifics about whether it's a park or
Okay.
licensing in general.
I think there's, and the hands have jumped up and down, but I think there's clearly very strong support for a licensing conversation. The specifics, we've got questions about those, but I think there's clear support for a licensing conversation.
You might want to vote. You might want to vote though.
Well, let's just do that now. We don't have the details. We're looking for, we
Well, we
need a
did vote.
licensing conversation. I've got some yellow hands. Let me see either physical hand or yellow hand if you're in favor of some kind of a conversation. Okay, got it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Other comments or questions?
I have a general comment.
Okay, and then Martha, you have your hand up.
Okay.
So there's still trying to wrap my head around who is on the task force and how many voters, but I'm a little disappointed that there are two new members and they're both, I mean, they voted against any off-leash privileges at their own park. And it just seems that advocates for the existing off-leash privileges, it should have been an even split.
Okay. Let me go with Martha, you had your hand up, and then
Yeah.
Dean and John, I don't know if your hands are up from
Oh, I'm
voting
sorry about
still, or
that.
if you're,
Okay.
I'm sorry about that.
okay.
I need to leave here, so my last statement is going to be that with the survey, I feel very disappointed because I really thought that the council was going to listen to the Englewood residents of what they wanted for their parks. And it seems like they still can't make up their mind, or they're being threatened or whatever. But for us to having to come back and issue the votes, redo the votes, I'm just disappointed in that. I think they should have just listened to the people that voted. It's like you vote for the president. You can't, when you vote for the president, you're voting, and that's it. So that's my opinion. And Stephen Kelly,
Okay.
when you say I'm doing hearsay, I've talked to people, so you can't say I'm just
Okay,
doing hearsay.
Well,
I
I talk to people too.
I have to go.
Guys, we're not going there. We've got to get wrapping up, so we're not going to go there. Dean?
Yeah, and I got to go. So,
okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dean?
Yeah, I just wanted to, acknowledge Steve's, comment. And all I would say is that as much as, points of view were represented from Englewood Unleashed, and then also too with the survey, conversely, we had no voice, and we attempted to try and be involved in the process. I understand that, albeit it came late, but having no voice is worse than having it be at least later in the discussion. And it came up in your discussions. It came up specifically from Jake, and that we had raised them before. So I would hope we at least have some understanding that we had a right to at least be present in specifically Emerson.
Okay.
I'm happy to have had a chance to hear both of your opinions. I think it was very important, and I think you do have, you do need to have your voices heard, and it wouldn't be appropriate necessarily. I abstained from the vote on Emerson Park because I don't go up there. It's just that we at Jason Park have been battling, and frankly, they're as Stephen mentioned, this group, whether it was a subcommittee or task force, has presented on more than one occasion to get rid of the off-leash privileges. I'm trying to find reasons. I hear, I'll just say, the ticketing doesn't support it. But anyway, it's important that there be balance on this committee, especially in the voting people, and the balance just isn't there. And there's a lot of personal interest in Jason Park just from proximity. But thank you.
There is. I'm gonna go to Jake.
Thank you, by the way. Thank you.
Jake?
Oh, yeah, sorry, thanks. So yeah, I do have to run. But yeah, I would just like to reiterate, I thought the survey results, the statistically valid survey results were pretty clear. There was a 73% support, well outside the margin of error for a reduction of some kind. I think when you consider that the original proposal from the commission a year ago was to completely eliminate off-leash at several parks, I think that the fenced enclosures is a great compromise, and it's what every other city does. And I thought the questions here tonight, I didn't really know how to answer most of them, because it's to me, I feel like it's more of an issue of, is this too much or not enough? And in my opinion, several of the solutions here were not enough. In any case, on the biggest question of Jason Park, and then the off-leash preferences in general, the results were pretty unambiguous. I would kind of hate to see the pretty clear survey results be kind of muddled. Anyway, I do have to go, but thanks so much for having me, and yeah, have a good night.
And Jake, real quick, I'll add one thing in just so you all understand. I will also add survey results to when we present to council. So they'll see how the community voted or what they wanted, in addition to what you all presented tonight as well.
Okay, one thing, if you don't mind, one thing I did see when I dove into the actual results that I didn't feel like was made real clear in Polko's presentation. There is something about old versus new residents and their preferences. So in terms of people who wanted the status quo, there was no significant difference whatsoever in the three groups of residency length. And when we have dogs can be off leash, but in a fenced area, there was significantly more support. It graduated up 10 points at a time, the lower amount of time people have been here, because I feel like the presentation or the executive summary kind of gave the impression that newer residents want off leash more or something, but what they want is fenced off leash. And there really is a mandate in these results for people want fenced off leash, which is what every other city basically does. So
okay,
anyway, I'm done.
I'm not going to redo that argument. I'm not going to redo.
There are
that
lies,
discussion.
there are damn lies,
So-
and there are
so,
statistics that are taught in,
Steve-
that's a statement taught in
Steve-
math class.
Steve,
And
we're
you
not
get the
going. We're not.
results you want.
Steve,
Yeah.
we're not going there.
Yep,
We've already been there.
yep.
So I think that we're done for this evening. I appreciate everybody's time, and I appreciate your commitment. I know there are strong feelings and emotions, and we'll get this figured out. Christina, I appreciate all the effort that you and your staff have put into getting us to this point. And so we'll take it from here and get a proposal back to council. So thanks everybody for joining us, and I appreciate the time that you gave us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.